Good morning from a very snowy Ukraine. We've travelled across Ukraine. We're now it was about 10 or so hours. We're more north now. But I want to talk about Rupert Lowe and his announcement of the Restore Britain party and how the far right is basically in tatters in the UK. This is not good for them. And it's a really interesting thing. I think it's something quite unique about British politics as to why this is happening. But let me just give you the run through. So Rupert Lowe was part of Reform. He was elected, I think it's Great Yarmouth. He got the seat. And he was expelled from the Reform Party. I can't actually fucking remember what it was over. I think he was just very racist, right? So what Reform tries to do is Reform tries to skirt its racism, make it acceptable. And I think Rupert Lowe is just a bit more mask off. Actually, no, I remember. They claimed he punched someone or something like that. So pretty insane. And so him and Farage have had beef for a long time. And there was rumours a while ago, there was a poll, like, a poll for who's going to win the next election. And they put Rupert Lowe, if Rupert Lowe had a party, in as one of the options. And it got a 10% of vote share, which is fucking insane. I think most people, myself included, didn't think that Rupert Lowe was very big beyond Twitter. Or I suppose that could still just be as big as he is. And that's just how many people are using Twitter. But yeah, it was kind of shocking. And months passed, and there was a lot of rumours that he might start a party. He denied it for a while, but then he's come out doing this party, and I think it has fucked the far right. It's caused this major division, and it was sort of a long time coming, because whilst, the far right, basically it's the same shit. Migrants are bad, minority groups are bad, we need to go back to some form of glory and everything will be okay, we need to be really tough on criminals and blah, 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 blah. All the same shit, it's just conservative politics, but it's just dialed up a notch, right? There's no attempt to be respectable, there's no attempt to try and be, progressive, it's just mask off conservatism. Whereas conservatism in the past, it tried to talk the talk of we're good people, but blah, 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 blah. They just mask off, that's the only difference. However, and we have to be accurate, is that there are levels to the far right itself. And definitely Restore Britain is further to the right than Farage. So for a long time, the critique people had been having of Farage is he wasn't tough enough on Islam, right? When asked, does he think Islam is a problem? He sort of said sometimes, there's problematic parts of Islam in the UK, but he wouldn't do anything specific. It doesn't seem like he's talking about wanting to ban the burqa or, be really tough on Muslims or something like this. And I think that was specifically how he answered a question once, where he said something along the lines of, Muslims are a big part of the voting population. We need to get Muslims on board in order for us to win, right? And that is what I saw. So I watched Rupert Lowe's announcement video, and, the only thing that there was two things that really seemed different. But the only thing that really seemed different was their immigration stance was very anti-Islam, right? So the anti-Islam energy had been channeled through Tommy Robinson for a long time. And that anti-Islam energy is almost separate to the anti-migrant energy. And you have to remember this sometimes on the left, we do allow ourselves to paint broad brushes on the right. I do it all the time. But there is factions, there's massive factions. And so the general appeal of the general far right is sort of about illegal immigrants and about maybe immigration numbers are too high as of recent. So there might not be this hatred towards multiculturalism, and there definitely isn't always a hatred towards Islam. They are different factions. So some places will just say, we're fine with immigration, but it's just too much too soon, and from certain parts of the world, right? That is a degree different from being anti-multiculturalism or anti-specifically Islam. People will have Muslim friends, neighbours, they might not be anti-Muslim, but they might just say, I don't want too much immigration, blah, blah, blah. Whereas what Restore are doing are saying, no, we're anti-Islam. He said in his big video, I would ban halal, I would ban the burqa, I would ban this, blah, 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 blah. Cousin marriage, all this stuff that's apparently going on or whatever. I don't know about the cousin marriage thing. I need to hear and learn a bit more about that. But they want to ban things that are what they attribute to Islamification of Britain. So they've made that a real attack point, whereas Farage doesn't do that because he knows that is probably a step too far. And so there was a period of time where people like Tommy Robinson were quite anti-Farage. And a lot of them were. A lot of them were sort of saying that he's not tough enough on Islam. And this is where Restore Britain, rather. God, they've all got such fucking similar names. my camera cut out. They've got such similar fucking names. You know, it's the same shit. Reform, Restore, Advance UK. What's the other one? There's one more. But there's so many of these things. And this is the point, right? Is that the UK political system is interesting because whilst America is a two-party system, you have one ability, one vessel in which you can take power, which is the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. So you have to, if you're going to make your insurgent far right, you have to make it within that parameter, in that sort of infrastructure. In the UK, we have more parties, but first past the post basically means we have two parties. But what the other parties serve as is political pressure groups because they pull votes away from the main parties. So Reform were previously the Brexit Party, which were previously UKIP. They were taking votes away from the Conservatives, which could split the vote and basically mean that Labour get in. So the Conservatives, in order to not lose to Labour, would adopt some of the positions of the far right smaller groups, which was what Brexit was, right? Conservatives didn't want Brexit. Brexit is very anti-business. Conservatives are meant to be the party of business. They adopted Brexit because they realised they were going to lose votes to Farage and then lose to Labour. So our system is quite different. It's also very different from proportional representation that you have in Europe. So in Europe, the far right is much more united. So because if you're a party and you get 10%, 15% of the vote, that is real political power. Like you can form governments, you can be part of a coalition, you have actual political power. Whereas in the UK, you might get 10, 15% of the vote and you'll get 0 seats. Like that happens, that can happen. So there's a real weird system with first past the post that is quite unique to us, which basically promotes factionalism. Differently to, say, Europe, where they can be more united because they can actually gain power realistically. And then also America, where they basically just have to go under the one entity. So that becomes, your only avenue is to unite under one strongman, aka Trump. And the UK isn't like that, right? Because at this point, if you're a small party in this current climate, you might get no seats. So they can't all agree on stuff and they're all ripping each other apart, right? All their differences over, is it Islam? Is it this place? Is this place? That is starting to break the coalition. And at this point in time, they're all trying to do the power grab. They all want to be the guy and they're all kind of testing the waters, right? So they're going to have slightly different styles. So UKIP, that was the other one I forgot to say, UKIP, they are doing the same thing. So we have now 3 or 4 parties that are basically the same, which is Reform, UKIP, and Restore Britain. And they're all trying to do different vibes. Like, really, it's the same politics, but they're trying to do different tones to see which will land with the people. I think Reform is the most successful. They're the best branding, in my opinion. They appeal to the widest base. UKIP has gone down this really weirdly extremist route. Like, they've now got the Iron Cross, which is basically, it's a Nazi symbol in their logo, and he's doing like Nazi salutes. I mean, he does this, I'm not going to do it, but he does this with his hand instead of the straight hand. And he does things where he goes through a town. This is Nick Tenconi or whatever. And he does like, what's it called? Crusades, where he goes through a Muslim area and then protests against them. So it's very radical. So we're getting this sort of thing where they're all trying to test the waters. And Restore, what they're trying to do is appeal to like a return to old Britain. So basically, it's Cotswolds supremacy. That's what I'm calling it. It's the Cotswolds supremacy separatist movement, where they want all of Britain to be basically country pubs, farms, and walking the dog, which is nice. Like, I'll visit the Cotswolds, but I think there is definitely a limited demographic there. And this is like kind of what's interesting, right? So that appeal to returning to an old Britain that is very like middle class, sort of wealthy farmer. I'm not going to say every farmer is loaded, but their lifestyle is very different to that of like a inner city office worker or a factory worker or something like that. They're appealing to this, which is very popular online, really, on Twitter, because it has an aesthetic to it, right? You can show these old videos of like beautiful parts of Britain, and they talk a lot about Christianity. They talk a lot about like returning to this sort of basically rural Britain. That's going to appeal to, I would say, these sort of culture warriors who have become these sort of Christian nationalists online. These are your Carl Benjamins, your, what's his name, Connor Thompson or whatever. These kind of guys where they romanticize this sort of image, they're going to like this shit But you got to remember, when it comes to winning an election, that might be popular online, but day to day, that isn't people's normal life. That is, to be honest, quite an elite, privileged, middle class life to be able to live in the Cotswolds. Mostly. I know they have problems, blah, blah, blah. But generally, most people live in towns, cities, and these cities are declining. So what Reform does is they build their coalition around general anti-immigrant sentiment, and they try not to be too radical. They try and be as broad as possible so that they can cast a wide net. Because really, the interest of people who live in the Cotswolds and the lifestyle and the things they think about are very different to that of someone who lives in like a declining town, Blackpool, right? They're very different culturally, very different lifestyles, very different concerns. Reform tries to tie them together under just blanket anti-immigration stuff. What Restore Britain does is try to now, well, basically it siphons off this type of person who's more of like a cultural traditionalist. That's not someone in Blackpool. I'm sorry to say it, but if you're someone in Blackpool, struggling town, and you're not doing well, your lifestyle isn't that of walking the dogs around the Cotswolds, going to garden centres for a nice cup of tea. That isn't your life. You know, you're more used to betting shops. You're more used to pubs closing down. You're more used to like crime in your city centre. Very different types of people, very different concerns. And this is another thing that makes the British coalition of the far right more fractured than that of America, is that there isn't actually that much cultural similarity between a lot of the far right. So if we look at America, they have guns, they have Christianity, evangelical Christianity, and anti-immigration sentiment, right? They're three things that on the right you can campaign on and you can unite massive swathes of the population under, those three things, because that's a massive, like, they've worked a long time to build that. In the UK, you can't really run on like a Christianity thing because there's just, we're not very Christian. We don't have a thing of guns, right? The only thing that unites them is anti-immigration. And if they start doing this stuff where they peel off into different corners to reflect different cultural attitudes, you're going to lose a lot of people. Like, you just will, because again, the crossover isn't strong enough. The tie-ins aren't strong enough. They don't have the same anchor points that the American far right has. And to Europe, they don't have the same power potential that a united far right can have in Europe. So you're seeing always clash of personalities, clash of different attitudes, and ultimately, I'm a believer they all just want money and power. Like, these people, they make a lot of money being that guy on Twitter. You know, I think at some point there is an element that they're just clashing egos, and they just really are trying to get their bag. Like, I do think that is part of it. But what it means for us and the Greens, and this is the quiet part of the story no one's fucking talking about. So there was a poll that was basically, did I just tread in a puddle? Yes, that sucks. There was a poll that showed the current polling. It was Find Out Now. I don't know how good they are. I'm not very knowledgeable on polling companies and who's good and who's not. But they showed that you had Reform at about 25% at the top. Restore Britain came somewhere 4/5 at 10%. This was the big shock, 10%. And then you had Greens second place at 20%, right? 20%. That's the hidden story. The Greens are polling at 20% and they're second place. And Reform, really, with all the endless blunders and all of the contradictions, the Russia stuff, bringing in Tories, just becoming less and less popular, the work from home scandal where Farage says he wants to ban working from home. This stuff is going to make them less and less popular. And the Greens are just going to keep working and keep grafting and keep moving forward. And I think they might take top space maybe in like a year or so. The far right keeps fragmenting. Farage keeps just talking, because every time that boy opens his mouth and it isn't about immigration, he fucks up, because people realise, hang on a second, I might not like the Browns, but I actually do like working from home. So this is kind of, this is kind of fucking them. And I think it is good for us. I think this does open an opportunity for the Greens, and I think we can take this. And I want to say, this is the last thing. So the Greens also, you know, on the left, we also had our split. I'll happily say on the far left, because, you know, if I would say a socialist is a far left movement, or just firmly left at least, we had your party, or we have your party. And luckily, I don't know, we dodged a bullet. They were really badly... the execution was fucking terrible. But at least there's more solidarity amongst two, you know. So, low battery sign again. I don't know what happened there. There's more solidarity. So, your party pulled out of a certain election that the Greens were looking favourable to win, I believe. And there's a bit more solidarity on the left when it comes to fighting the far right. Now, they do... Your party, it's a weird one, but basically they fuck themselves and they don't really have much wide appeal. They're very, like, purist, I would say anti-imperialist leftist. Arguably, I would say a bit tanky. Like, that's kind of my impression. They seem very much Puritans. They seem a little bit stuck in the sort of 2015, 2014 way of doing things on the left. They're a bit stuck in their ways, and luckily for us, they just haven't made the bang that Zach did, and Zach took the moment, really. So, I mean, it might, over time, we still do have the same vulnerabilities, but I think at the moment, the left-wing argument that's coming through Zach is very widely appealing to lots of people, and that's the problem you're seeing with reform, with Restore Britain, etc., is it's appealing on one topic, anti-immigration, but all the other things they fall apart over. So we have a widely appealing message, and I think we have an opportunity. So I want to hear what you think. I'll catch you in a bit.